This past summer, I decided to take my very own road trip in my Range Rover, which was my first big solo trip in my newish car. I love road trips, but honestly, I just don't get to take them by myself too often. So this one really did feel extra special, and it's one that I'm not going to soon forget. I was traveling to Nashville for a girls' trip, meeting up with a friend in the city, which meant I just needed to find my own way there. She was flying. I decided I was going to drive. And when I mapped it out, I saw Nashville was only about an 11-hour drive from Rochester, New York. And I used to live in Nashville, fun fact. And when I did that, I would always travel home to Pennsylvania to see my family. And that drive was usually 13 hours or more. That drive always felt so awful. So I figured if I could survive that and do that multiple times throughout the years, I could definitely handle this 11-hour drive there. So the entire drive, it was basically highway, which made it super, super easy. I decided ahead of time that I was going to find stops every 2 to 3 hours just so I could get a break, walk around, stretch, go to the bathroom. And it was also July. It was the middle of summer. So hiking trails, waterfront parks, all of these different outdoor stops were obviously on my list. So if you're planning to travel from upstate to New York to Tennessee, here is exactly where I stopped and where I would recommend you stopping if you make the drive, just so you can make it way more enjoyable. Okay, for starters, I took the New York State Thruway so I could head west into Ohio for the easiest and most direct route. So I didn't stop in Buffalo, but depending on where you're driving from, this could be honestly a really good first stop because Buffalo has tons of breakfast stops and places to stretch your legs. I left around 6 a.m., so I wasn't really ready to stop yet when I passed through, so I just kept going. My original plan was also to stop in the Presque Isle State Park in Pennsylvania to get out and walk, but it just looked like such a beautiful spot right off the highway. But when I was driving that morning, it was rainy and it was dark and crappy, so I just kept driving. And that's one of my biggest road trip tips is if you feel motivated to keep driving, just do it. Because the motivation really does come and go really quickly. So if you feel like driving, just keep driving. So my first stop was actually the Bicentennial Park in Cleveland. This is when I finally decided to stop, and I'm really glad I did. Because I got out for a quick walk, I was able to see the Cleveland sign, which was really, really cool. And the water, the skyline of the city, it was just absolutely beautiful. And there were some really cool old ships there. So it was like the perfect first real stop to really just reset my brain and get moving and grab a bite to eat too. I grabbed a bite to eat at Bites Cafe and a hot latte, which was right near the Cleveland sign. And then I just headed right back out. So this area, it was so easy to access from the highway. It just took maybe 2 minutes, getting off the highway to find parking. It was just super quick. I was really surprised by that. And you can't ask for anything easier than that. And also, if you're looking for a bathroom, that's also why I went to Bites Cafe, so I could buy something and use their bathroom. So my second stop was Columbus, Ohio. That's where I stopped at the North Market, which was such a cool spot. I wasn't really expecting that. I just wanted a really good lunch stop and somewhere fun to walk around. And I just kept seeing recommendations for North Market, and it just sounded like a really interesting place. And it ended up being a really great decision. The market was super easy once again to get off the highway. It was maybe a 5-minute drive. And then there was plenty of affordable, easy parking right across the street from it. I walked around, I checked out the vendors inside, grabbed a couple of little souvenirs, and I ate at this awesome dumpling spot. I still dream about it. It was called Momo Gar, and I was really excited to see that it was a restaurant that was actually featured on Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. You know, that show with Guy Fieri? So it was totally worth it. And like I said, I still think about those dumplings. My next stop was Louisville, Kentucky, where I stopped at the Big Four Bridge. I drove for a while after Columbus just because I felt good and I just didn't need to stop. And like I said, my number one tip is if you don't feel like stopping, don't stop. So my next planned stop was the Big Four Bridge in Louisville. And that one, it was also really easy to get to. It was maybe a little longer than 5 minutes, but it was just like a straight shot from the highway. And there was also free parking, which is always a plus. And I also couldn't believe that this bridge was here. Like, I've driven through here so many times and I never knew that the bridge was there, and it was beautiful. There's walking trails and sidewalks underneath the bridge, which is what I did. I didn't go up on the bridge. It was like 90 degrees that day. It was really deadly hot, but I just needed to get out and walk around. So looking at the bridge way up there, I was like, I don't want to be up there in the bright sunshine in 90-degree weather. So I stayed underneath, walked along the river. It was really pretty. I spent maybe like 20 to 30 minutes there just to get out and walk and stretch. And the bridge is actually a pedestrian only bridge, and it takes you all the way across the river. So I'm sure the views from up there are even better. And that was really neat to see. And also, for anyone that's wondering, there was a public restroom, which is always a huge win on a long road trip. And after Louisville, like, to be honest, I was just gunning it. Like, I wanted to be to Nashville around 7 p.m. And thanks to the time change, you gain an hour. So it worked out perfectly. I stopped for an early dinner at Panera, so nowhere super exciting, but Panera bread is always like a good one for a road trip. And I stopped there pretty much right after Louisville. It was right close to there. So, and I actually made it to Nashville at exactly 7 p.m. So I reached my goal. So that was cool. Very cool. Okay. So let's quickly talk about the drive back. So on the way back, I'll be honest, I didn't stop as much because the traffic was absolutely horrendous that day. I don't know what it was. I left early. Like, I left at 6 a.m. as well. So dealing with this traffic, I just really wanted to get home. But there were a few notable stops that are worth sharing. So if you're doing this drive in either direction, these would be some really nice stops. And like I said, I left at 6 a.m. And you lose an hour going back into New York time zone. So my goal was to be home by 9 p.m. My first stop after Nashville was Elizabethtown, Kentucky, where I stopped at Vibe Coffee Shop because I really wanted breakfast and a latte. I just love trying like little local coffee shops, and this one was absolutely adorable. So I also walked the town square a little bit just to kind of get out and walk around and get some fresh air. And the town square was just so adorable. And parking was free. So it was definitely a good first stop. And honestly, I know I stopped in between like to get gas and go to the bathroom, but at this point I couldn't even tell you where because it's all a blur. I was just like, boom, trying to get to my destination, So my next stop wasn't until like my next official stop wasn't until Ohio, which was Forest Hill Park in Cleveland Heights. So I don't think it was super easy to get from the highway just because of red lights and traffic. I mean, it was easy, but it was like, okay, maybe a 10-minute detour, but just to get out and walk around. And it even had like a really, really nice bathroom, which means a lot on a road trip. That made it worth it, like to get out, walk around, see the pond, the field, the greenery, and just get out and like enjoy the weather before getting back to Rochester was, that meant everything. And after that, just a short drive from there, I grabbed dinner at what is now one of my favorite chains, which is Piatta Italian Street Food. Oh my God. It was amazing. I ordered a chicken Alfredo sub and a cannoli on the side, and I just couldn't believe what I was tasting. I don't know if it's because it was a long drive and I was just really, really hungry, but it just was the best sub I've ever had. Actually, it wasn't a sub. It was like a wrap. As you can see in the picture, it was a wrap, but still the best freaking thing I've ever had. It was so good. So yeah, Piatta is definitely one of my favorites now, and I will always make sure to stop there when I go through Ohio. Unfortunately, we don't have one near us. But after that stop, I just booked it right home, and I made it to Rochester right around 9 p.m., which I was perfectly on target. So road trip achieved. So an 11-hour drive, I know it sounds intimidating, but breaking it up with those intentional, fun stops really made this road trip genuinely enjoyable. And instead of just trying to get there, like it actually felt like part of the trip. Like when I talk about my trip to Nashville, I actually talk about the trip getting there and back because that's how much I enjoyed the stops that I made. So if you're driving from upstate or Western New York to Nashville or anywhere in Tennessee, I really can't recommend this route enough. With a few good stops, some good coffee, and a good playlist, it's really just a beautiful drive. And if you're trying to plan a road trip and you want ideas how I personally make long drives easier and more fun, I'm going to be sharing that in another upcoming post, so be sure to like and subscribe so you can be notified when that video is released. And then in the meantime, check out my free road trip essentials printables checklist. I know it's a mouthful. And so you can see what we pack in our car for a road trip, because I know we've gone on plenty of road trips throughout the year and have forgotten things, anything from, chargers to a jack when a tire pops. So this road trip checklist is definitely something I follow now, just to make sure we don't forget things like that. And now you can too. So be sure to download our free road trip essentials printable checklist. I will share the link below. You can also comment and I'll send it to you directly. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.